Hi. I wasn't planning on making this video, but then episode 6 came out. More importantly, episode 7 came out. Episode 8 was all about Harmony Kobelvig, my favorite character. How can I not talk about this? I wanted to get this video released before episode 9 came out, and life happened. Was not able to do that, so I will also be adding a little blurb about episode 9, so stay tuned for that. Again, I'm still planning on doing a full video going in depth on the whole season. I just wanted to pop in and give a couple thoughts about the last few episodes because I think it's just, might as well. I'm gonna do this similar structure to my last one. I'm just gonna give brief overview thoughts about each episode and then pick one scene to dissect from each of the episodes. Just for the heck of it, just for the fun of it. Let's go. Episode 6 is titled Attila. I think that's fun because we learned that Attila becomes the nickname between Bert and Fields. They call each other Attila instead of Hun. They're so into history like that. They're just so like, oh my god, so cute. But I think it's fun that the episode is titled Attila because this episode is just all about love and the relationships between the characters, like the romantic relationships specifically. God, I don't even know what to talk about first. There's so much in this episode. Dylan and Gretchen have another little date together and it's so cute.
Want to hear about all my offspring and stare at your face?
They're so cute. I'm actually obsessed with them.
With you, I'm super happy.
I kind of love that it's going the direction of an affair with her husband, but like a different version of her husband. The fact that she denies that she even saw the innie Dylan that day to her outside Dylan, pretty telling because they like made out, they were like making out. I think to her it is like an affair because they are two different people even though they're in the same body. What a fascinating concept, what a fun storytelling device. Mark S and actual Helly have sex this time around. When Mark, did it with Helena, they were very intentionally lit with red light in the background. And I love that when Mark and Helly do their thing, there's white light behind them, kind of showing the innocence and the purity of their love for each other. I also really love how Helly had to go away and process after Mark finally told her he had had sex with Helena, not her.
We shared vessels.
Britt Lower's acting for Helly in this moment is so good. Like when Mark initially tells her, it hits her for a second, she doesn't seem to have a reaction, and she's like, oh yeah, that's good. And then she's like, oh wait, no, that's bad. And then she just like, okay, I need to process this, walks away. It's cool to see the range of emotions and how she ultimately boils it down to, he wants me. And that's what matters. Yes, he was deceived by someone. That wasn't his fault. The most important thing here is that he wants me. It's just so deep. It's so good. And I love that she comes up to him and she's like, nah. We're doing this again, and it's gonna be me this time. When Irving goes to dinner with Bert and Fields, that scene was really interesting to me. So uncomfortable. When they bring up how Bert did Severance because of like religious reasons and the hope that Fields won't be alone in heaven, that's insane. That's insane. I just love how they're bringing in all these different perspectives of what severance means in the social zeitgeist or whatever. I think it's interesting the direction they're going with Fields. To me, at least, the way that this is written and portrayed, it seems that Fields is a pretty emotionally manipulative, potentially emotionally abusive partner toward Bert. And it seems like from what we've seen so far that Bert doesn't feel the romantic connection that he wants from his partner, and maybe that's why he's seeking out / stalking Irving. Yeah, I think that he was excited about the fact that his innie found a romantic connection with somebody. Now that Irving has kind of been introduced, there clearly is a mutual attraction between them as their outie selves, not just as their innies. So this is like a love that's defying Severance. I'm very curious to see the direction they go with this. I think we're going to see more of Fields being abusive toward Bert to help us root for Irving and Bert ending up together. Another thing about episode 6, when Helena approaches Mark at the restaurant, I found that scene really interesting. Back in episode 2, I believe, I had kind of a gut feeling of like, ooh, I think that Helena is gonna try and pursue the Audi version of Mark, but then she went undercover and pursued any Mark, and so in my mind I was like, oh, well, maybe she doesn't care about Audi Mark, but now she's seemingly trying to seduce him in some way. Like, they get kind of flirty with each other, and it's actually kind of cute.
Sure, why not?
You want to take me home to Dad already?
Yeah, I think it's finally time.
Okay.
They banter off each other well, and seems like it's just natural for them, and that they actually could potentially have a good relationship.
Sure, let's do it.
You'd be the first.
So, no pressure.
Yeah, none whatsoever.
Not trying to say that Mark and Helena should end up together. I think that she's a piece of shit for sleeping with him under false pretenses. Absolutely a terrible move. But I still think that her character is so cool and interesting. The love pentagon between Helly and Helena and Marcus and Gemma, like, I mean, I've never seen anything like this before, and I'm in love with it. So the scene I want to talk about in depth is this scene here with Milchick and Miss Wong.
You cannot graduate from this fellowship until I have deemed you winter-tide material.
I love how there's the blue wall with the iceberg photo. I just think it's cool that there's this consistent theme this season of like snow and winter and ice, and I don't know what it means, but I like it. I think it's cool, and I hope that by the end of the season that theme is going to make more sense. I love the tension that's happening between Milchick and Miss Wong. She is pretty clearly a very brainwashed child and has that like black and white thinking distilled into her, or she thinks that she is righteous or doing the right thing because she's being, you know, letter of the law with all the rules. She's been calling out Milchick for being nice to the innies, for having some compassion toward them. And that line at the end of the scene, the way that she delivers her like, "Thank you, Mr. Milchick," is so good. There's so many layers in that delivery.
Thank you, Mr. Milchick.
She's like evil. Milchick had said to her, you need to eradicate from your essence childish folly, using too many big words, which is something she clearly reported him on, and he got his performance review on. That scene after this where he's sitting looking in the mirror and changing his words, eradicate from your essence childish folly, and how that slowly turns into turning away from childish things, which is a very biblical statement, and then turning into grow up. Ooh, then how he's looking in the mirror, almost saying it to himself. I think in that moment, he's grappling with all these feelings with his performance review and them telling him he's doing things wrong and him feeling hurt by that, but trying to be a good religious boy and looking in the mirror trying to say, get over this, get over the pain that this is causing you. You need to stop worrying about yourself, stop being selfish, grow up. And he's saying it to himself, I think.
Grow up. Grow.
It's just interesting to see him grapple with this performance review that is so based in trivial things that don't really matter. And that all boils down to the conformity to the cult. The cult wants you to be a specific way. You need to be acting perfectly. If you're putting your paper clips on the paper backwards, you are doing something wrong. You are not worthy or righteous enough. This is what cults do. They control every aspect of your life so intimately that something so trivial like, I don't know, drinking coffee could make you not be qualified to go to heaven in some cases. And Lumen is clearly doing the same kind of thing here to Mr. Milchick.
Grow up.
Okay, moving on to episode 7. Wow. Episode 7. Yeah. You know, ranking my top Severance episodes as of right now, my number 1 episode is still the season finale of season 1. That episode is insane. That episode goes hard. It is a crowning achievement in the history of television. Second place, season 2, episode 7. Third place, season 2, episode 3 was pretty good as well. But season 2, episode 7, Wow. So many thoughts about this. First of all, up to this point, they've been doing a really good job at making us love Mark and Helly together. The way that they've been building that relationship between Mark S. and Helly is so fun. It's so good. Even though this whole time, I personally have been hoping that Mark ends up with Gemma in the end, because literally this is like the driving force for his life is his wife. Like, it's so clear how much he loves this woman. My heart is like, yes, he needs to be back with Gemma again. Having him reunite and solve his depression would be so wonderful. But at the same time, they've been building this thing with him and Helly. So contrasting this with episode 6, where Mark and Helly actually just had their first time, you know, and it was lit by the white light and it was so wholesome. So after that, I'm sitting here like, okay, well, it seems like they're leading us to want to like Helly, and probably Mark is going to end up with Helly/Helena at some point in the future seasons or whatever, because that's what the show is kind of leading me to believe. And I'd been thinking, like, I want to be rooting for Gemma, his actual wife, as much as I'm rooting for Helly right now. How in the world are they going to do that? And episode 7 happened, and I was like, oh, that's how they're gonna do it. That's how they're gonna make me absolutely fall in love with Mark and Gemma. This episode is like the up scene, you know, the iconic up scene between Carl and Ellie. One of the best, most wholesome, heartbreaking love stories ever shown on the screen. And honestly, episode 7 and the love story between Mark and Gemma, the way that they did that is absolutely comparable to the scene in Up to me. One of the only things I've seen that matches that quality, that caliber of storytelling. Specifically with this episode, I love how it started with us finally seeing Gemma trapped in Lumen and her situation. But the thing we see first is her daydreaming about Mark. It's been years that she's been trapped, but she is still constantly thinking about Mark. We come back to reality with the person testing Gemma asking, "Where did you go?"
Where did you go?
I love how they end the episode the same way. When Mark finally wakes up after like being asleep the entire episode, Devin wakes him up and says, "Where did you go?" Oh, I'm like gonna cry.
Where'd you go?
And we just see these flashes of Gemma looking just so beautiful. I'm actually tearing up right now thinking about it. This is so dumb. I'm sorry. Okay, I did not expect that to happen. Okay, while Mark is going through a process of what we can only assume is a full reintegration of him with his innie, the thing that he goes to is Gemma. The only thing he wants is Gemma. Oh my god. Sorry, this episode was so good. We also get more details about Mark's life with Gemma, how she had a miscarriage, which we knew that they had tried to have kids and it didn't work out, but now we know more depth into that. And it's interesting, they showed us a little bit of how this miscarriage affected Gemma. Whatever doctor's office she was at, for whatever reason, she got on some mailing list that got her involved with Lumen, and now they're sending her these like cards that we saw in season 1. It seems to me as if she is being targeted by Lumen because she is in such a vulnerable place due to her miscarriage. There's another thing that cults do when recruiting members. They specifically seek out people who have been through vulnerable events or people who are having a difficult time in life because they are more open to the message. But in reality, people in those situations get desperate and are much more easy to manipulate. And I believe that that's what happened to Gemma, that's what they're trying to show us here. Okay. The scene I want to talk about, I want to dissect the love story developing between Gemma and Mark. I loved this scene. The editing style and the directorial style. It still feels like the same show, but there was so much new storytelling style added into it. It felt different in such a good way. I love how artistic and creative it is and how it feels like almost a scrapbook. I think it's so cute how he brings her the ant farm and it was totally the wrong thing to get her. And instead of her being offended and weirded out by it, she was just like, she just rolled with it and they were just bantering off of each other and it's so cute.
I hate ants.
Oh, shit.
I love farms.
Oh, good.
There are some people who would take a gift like that and be like, hurt by it or offended by it or be like, ew, this isn't what I wanted. I love how it doesn't matter to her. Like, it's the gesture that matters, clearly. How neither of them are embarrassed about it. They're just happy and they like being around each other. And how we jump from there into the future where they're like together and she's kissing on him and distracting him. And side note, Mark looks so good in these scenes. In my last video about Severance, I talked about how his hair in episode 5, when he sees Gemma in the hallway, and how it looks better than it's looked the entire show so far, and how I feel like that was intentional. This is more proof, I guess, that Mark's hairstyle has been so intentionally done this entire time. They have been trying to make him look bad. They've been trying to make him look tired and depressed. And it's so cool the way that they did this, because now we see Mark when he was with Gemma and he looks so different. He looks so happy. He looks so handsome. There's such a stark contrast between Mark with Gemma and Mark without Gemma. And the fact that that payoff was probably planned by them for a long time. Like, I've said it 5,000 times, but it's true. I don't know what else to say. It's so good. When I'm talking about like the scrapbook kind of stuff, this is what I'm talking about. This next like really artistic, almost like a music video edit a little bit. And I love it. I love the energy that this editing is bringing in and the storytelling. It's so cool. Then there's that transition into a dinner conversation with Devin and Rickon, and their hairstyles are different. You could tell that it's like a different time for everybody. They had to have filmed this at a much different time than they filmed everything else to help make everyone look so different in this scene than they do normally in the show. I love that detail. I love that attention to the continuity, making it so believable and not taking you out of it by having people wear wigs or doing weird makeup stuff. Like, it just feels so natural the way that they do this. I love this episode. This episode is so good. Again, it's like that Up love story where now I almost don't really care about Helly and Mark anymore, because to me, so clearly Gemma is the right person for him and he loves her so much. They're gonna have to break my heart in some way moving forward. Either it's gonna be something really tragic with Gemma or something really tragic with Helly. I don't know, but something's gonna happen. Mark can't actually have both of these good relationships in his life. There's gonna have to be something that makes this sad or makes things fall apart, and I don't know where it's gonna go, but man, am I in love with Mark and Gemma. I'm just so impressed with the ability to portray such a strong love, such a deep connection between two people with so few words. Mwah. Mwah, mwah. Additionally, gotta talk about this too. There's that whole scene where they're like looking at Gemma through a computer and then they back up into some cables and they like travel through cables and stuff. That was practical effects. That was practical effects. This scene was entirely like made. This is not CGI. This is not animated. They made this. They made this to put a camera through it. What? Sorry? There need to be some awards given out for this episode, and there need to be awards given to this director because she did a phenomenal job. If I'm understanding correctly, this is her directorial debut and she smashed it. She smashed it out of the park. This is why we need to let women do more things, okay? You need, like, seriously, women are so cool and they do so many cool things and they do so many cool things so well. Thanks for letting a woman do this, because she absolutely destroyed all of television. It's been broken now and everyone's gonna have to refigure out how to do television now. That's what I have to say about this freaking episode. Let's talk about the next one. Episode 8. I will say this episode wasn't one that I'm like obsessed with, but I really liked this episode because I freaking love Harmony Cobell. Y'all know how obsessed I am with Cobell. I'm left with so many questions. I want to know what her deal is. I was right about that oxygen tube thing being for her mother and her mother's death somehow being related to Lumen. I didn't realize the depth of where that goes. I'm kind of going crazy trying to dissect what was going on with this small town, this little town that Cobell goes to, which seems like this is where Lumen was founded. Like, this is the original Lumen factory. It looks like a place that's from a different time. It looks like we're going back in time 200 years. There are not many places in the United States that still look like this to this day. And I just think that's so cool. Again, with all the snow and the ice and the water. Don't know what's going on there, but I love it. I did like that they showed us the original factory where Kier met Imogen. It's kind of weird that it's been abandoned by the cult. They've got offices all over the world now, and you'd think that their original location would be more of like a tourist kind of spot, but it still remains this old town, kind of decrepit and lost to time. That's something that is unusual to me and very curious to me. Maybe it's kind of out of the way and hard to reach, but you'd think if Lumen was such a big deal like it is, that people would want to come visit and tour this area. I'm surprised that Lumen would leave it in such disrepair, but maybe that's intentional. Maybe that's part of their past they want to kind of neglect and forget. I don't know. I'm very intrigued by this relationship between Cobell and this guy who was like another child slave at the hands of Lumen. That's very interesting. I love the power that she brings in when she talks to this guy. Like, she commands the room. She is such a powerful woman, and she knows it.
Tables are for paying customers.
Fine, then buy me a coffee.
I wish I could be as cool as that. I mean, I don't want to be an asshole, but I would love to have that kind of like power in a room, you know? I'm really curious about whatever Drummond said when he called in and talked to, I think Sissy is the lady who owns the house. Very curious whatever he said about Cobell to her. Also very curious as to why the room where her mother died, why that room was required to be locked until all her remaining family died. Like, what is going on there? That's weird. I also love that her mother was not a believer in the cult. And because of that, it almost seems like Cobell has kind of a secret rebellious edge inside of her where she doesn't actually fully trust the company Lumen. It seems like she's pretty like she believes the stuff of the cult. But that last episode had me wondering how much she believes, why she believes, what her ultimate end goal is with Lumen, what she's trying to accomplish. But it seems as if Cobell might potentially be more trustworthy than I previously thought, so we'll see. It's also crazy how she's kind of waking up to the cultiness of the company. She goes and finds her old sketchbook where apparently she came up with all these like high-tech severance procedure things. Like, she put all the designs into the chip, and then the cult told her that her ideas belong to everybody and told her not to tell anyone that she invented it. So fascinating. And it's fascinating that she's waking up to that. Like, wait a second, I invented this shit and they're treating me so badly. Something is waking up inside of her and I'm loving it. I love that extra detail about her being the inventor because it just makes her character so much more complex, showing us that she's actually incredibly smart and adds so many layers to her fascination with Severance and with Mark and Gemma and analyzing their relationship when she was their boss. Like, there's so much being unveiled about her that's fascinating. I kind of hope she stays a villain. I don't know. I kind of like her as a weird culty villain. It would seem kind of abrupt if she just was suddenly not a believer in it anymore. I was honestly a little bit shocked that Devin kept calling her over and over. I hope that Devin is at least of the understanding that Cobell would be frustrated with Lumen and would be wanting to turn against them, and that's why she's reaching out to Cobell, because otherwise it does not make sense that Devin would be so persistently trying to reach her instead of just trusting Ragabi. There has to be some kind of reason for it. I'm curious to see where this goes with Cobell and with Ragabi. I don't really have a specific scene I want to dissect in this one, I think. Yeah, this episode just creeped me out more than anything. It gave me huge like horror culty vibes, especially the sissy lady, the old lady in the end where she's like being really creepy and culty and saying all this weird culty stuff to Cobell. Like, she was wild.
Everything that you have, you owe back to the Egans as fealty.
Yeah, this show's fun. Okay. Quick little episode 9 blurb here, coming from me in the future. Feel like with episode 9, we're finally starting to put pieces together. We're getting into the thick of it, you know, to the food via life of it.
The food via life of it.
I really enjoyed episode 9. It surprised me a lot. A lot of things that the characters were doing were very bold and shocking to me. The whole thing that went down with Dylan and Gretchen and him like giving her a ring. It was so sweet. That was kind of an interesting direction for them to go, with Gretchen like walking out on the situation. Gretchen! And then Dylan quitting. So that was kind of wild. I am still processing whatever happened with Bert and Fields. Apparently Fields was like a hitman, kind of. I don't know. I need to like really look into that, because I was very confused and shocked about what was going on with Bert. I don't love that idea. I don't love that storyline. I kind of just liked the idea of Bert and Fields just being like normal people who are a little bit kooky. Not sure how I'm feeling about the whole like killers part of it. We'll have to see how episode 10 goes, or if there's more resolution on that. I really liked the moments with Mr. Milchick in this episode where he stands up to Mr. Drummond. That was super cool.
Devour feculence.
And I liked that moment when Mark calls him and Milchick is like, yeah, you could see it was a big moment. There was a lot happening there internally with Mr. Milchick. I loved the acting in that moment. One of the biggest pieces of this episode that I think I'm finally figuring out is what's going on with Miss Wong and with the Wintertide Fellowship. Wintertide is mentioned in episode 6 and in episode 8 multiple times, and I feel like episode 9 with Miss Wong using the statue to break her toy, I feel like that has a lot of significance. Miss Wong is on the same path that Miss Cobell used to be on when she was a child. I'm gonna go more in depth about that on my full season 2 video, but that was something really cool about episode 9. I feel like kind of put some pieces together for me, at least. The whole show is just shot in such a beautiful artistic way, and this episode as well as episode 8 were particularly very artistic in the framing and the cinematography. I very much enjoyed the filming of both episode 8 and 9 a lot. First of all, the shot framing Miss Wong in front of Lumen as a bus is about to come pick her up. The colors and the framing with her next to the Lumen sign, and then when it flips around and you see the bus coming around, there's like a sunset just barely happening. Really pretty shots here. When Dylan is sitting waiting for the elevator and he's about to leave, there's a few different angles of him in front of that painting, and then they do a head-on shot with him in front of the painting, and it looks like the image of Keir is putting his hand on Dylan's head, which it's just so ominous and spooky, and looks as if Keir is giving him a religious blessing of sorts. This is really brilliant use of symbolism. I'm still so curious to see what ends up happening in the next episode, like if we get kind of an answer as to what this painting means, but I love that they're bringing back the painting again as Dylan's leaving. Oh, it's so fun. The scene I want to talk about in particular for this episode is the very last one. I loved the ending of this episode when we finally get to the birthing cabin and Annie Mark wakes up in the cabin and Devin is there like, it's okay. It's gonna be okay. She just wants to talk. And they take Mark upstairs and you see Miss Cobell there in this brilliantly lit, luxurious room. The lighting is just so good. It looks like we're entering into some kind of spooky cult ritual room in here. The chandelier is fucking gorgeous, by the way. I'm just blown away by how cool this lighting is. And when he walks in and then it just turns to that being what he's seeing, it's like, ooh, it kind of took me aback a little bit. It just was so cool. I don't know what other word to use. It's just so cool. My favorite part about this is the sound effect that they use when it switches over to Cobell's face. And with the music, there's that like, boom.
Do you remember the last thing that you said to me?
She's alive.
Kind of like a more loud, chaotic sound. I'm not sure what this sound is, but I love it. I love that it's kind of a rough, reverberating, like impactful, piercing kind of sound. I love that. Probably like the biggest sound effect we've had in the show, like in regards to the music and storytelling. It's just so good. I'm so excited to see what this all is. Again, I'm still not sure if we can actually trust Cobell. I want to trust her. It seems like she's turning against Lumen and wants to tear the company down or whatever, but like, I don't know. I'm excited to see what happens in the next episode. I'm hoping that it kind of ties this whole season together. Something about this season so far is that every episode has been so good. It's been so phenomenal, but the story has felt kind of disjointed throughout. Like it's kind of bits and pieces here, and we're not really sure what's going on with Mark's reintegration, and they're throwing things at us like the Ortbo thing where it just all of a sudden they're outside out of nowhere. There's a lot of curveballs. I'm really, really hoping that the last episode kind of helps it fit together and feel like it was a cohesive story throughout. I really enjoyed episode 9. I'm really excited to go in and do a super deep dive, dissect, the conversations and the acting in this episode, because it was really good. It was really good. Another one of my favorites from this season so far, I'd have to say. Okay, those are my thoughts on episode 9. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you have a really great day. Subscribe if you want to be sexy and hot. Like, actually, it will just make you so hot. All right, that's all my thoughts. Bye!